Each week, we take you on a compelling and thrilling journey featuring American legends, unsung heroes, esteemed celebrities, and others who are considered legends in their own right. And join me alongside my fellow co host, best-selling author Donald Jeffries, as we showcase incredible stories from extraordinary people. Get the inside scoop from the most intriguing people on the planet. Don, who might we have today?
Well, we have a musical legend. Graham Parker, I've said many times, part of the soundtrack of my youth. I mean, I absolutely still listen to his music regularly. He's been putting out great music since the 1970s. He's sold millions of records all over the world, and he's still going strong today. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have him on the show. Graham, welcome.
Well, thank you, Don and Ella. Nice to be here.
Well, it's great, and as I said, I've been listening to you for a long time. We've talked off air, and I've had the pleasure of meeting you a couple times when you're in DC at the City Winery here. And again, you're still going strong. So we probably talked about this privately a long time ago. But how exactly how did you become a rock star? Does anybody ask you that? We all want to be rock stars. How did you become one?
Well, I consider myself a working musician, which I'm more proud of than rock star,
Yes, yes.
which is a dubious term these days, I think. Uh, Anyone who sort of becomes popular, Obama is a rock star. Okay, what does it mean now? Does he play guitar? I don't know. But it's, I think the first 4 years were quite extraordinary because I was a menial worker, from the working class, and I was actually working in a petrol station, a gas station, when I got my first deal, and I was already 24 by then, so I took the long roundabout route to it because I was enjoying, leave home and then I'd go and live somewhere else and go to Morocco and do all that, the hippie trail thing, which was very informative and fantastic. That's what I thought you were supposed to do at age 18. Leave home and get out there and do things and not become bogged down in some sort of dull suburban life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me it would have been crushing. So I got out there and learned about the world. And so there I was with a record deal at the age of 24, which is a bit late. And it was extremely, unbelievably exciting, quite frankly.
Alan, you had a question?
Yes, I do. I had to get to the mute button really quick. So I'm I'm very excited. It's just so nice to have you, as I was talking about earlier. But my question is, what was the most difficult part in your rise to fame? What was, because the music business, at least as far as I know, because I'm kind of close to it, has like this dark underbelly. So what part, you can just talk briefly about it. What was the difficult part?
Well, I didn't understand how it worked. This was, I didn't have lots of bands that failed. I didn't do all that. I was like a guy keeping this to himself. And then I managed to meet the right person who introduced me to someone else who was a manager and boom, suddenly that I had a career. One demo tape got played on a local London radio show, and a guy called up from Phonogram, which is Universal, Philips at the time. So I had absolutely no idea how it worked. When I was on stage, suddenly with a fantastic band that was, something I'd never been with any band really to speak of, and I didn't even know what monitors were. There were these speakers on stage and everyone's going, "Oh, put the drums up in mine, put the bass up," and I'm standing there thinking, "Oh, I suppose I have to say that to the monitor mixer, And I didn't know what I was doing. I think that was the hardest part. So I became known as somebody who was, the sort of cliched angry young man, because I didn't know any other way to do it other than like scream and force it down their throats because I was too nervous about just being me and playing good, what I knew was good music. Um, so I think that adjustment was hard, but I fell into it very quickly, nonetheless. Um, I was trapped with my acoustic guitar for the whole show for about 5 or 6 gigs and realized eventually it was constraining me, actually, for a bit longer than that. I think a guitar strap broke one night and I put the acoustic down and started stabbing the air with my finger on this song "Don't Ask Me Questions" from my first album. And then from then on, it got more and more theatrical and more, the rock star thing, leaping around, running around the stage, pointing fingers and getting the crowd involved. So the adjustment was fairly quick to me, but that was mainly it. As far as record deals were concerned, I was lucky enough. Basically, my first album came out in 1976, and it wasn't complete rip-off in those days. It wasn't completely favourable to the artist, but it was much, much better than what people had to put up with in the past.
Yeah, yeah. How did you meet your bandmates?
Well, the band was, they weren't called the Rumor then, but they chose
Mhm.
that name once we started rehearsing and we knew this was going to be real. And it was through a guy named Dave Robinson who managed some of the people in the band who were in different bands that had been working for much longer than me. The Brinsley Schwartz band, guitar, two of the people were from that band. Guitarist from a band called Ducks Deluxe, the bass player and the drummer were very young guys. They were younger than me. They were in a band called Bon Ton Roulette, and they also played with a few other London musicians on and off. So they had more experience. But that was it was the manager, who put them together for me.
Yeah, okay. And then what was your favorite song that you've put out? And then also, what was the most commercially successful song?
Well, I just think that "Don't Ask Me Questions" keeps going on a bit, but I have to bring it to modern day when I got four songs on the Judd Apatow movie "This Is 40," followed and a song that I wrote for the movie, which won an ASCAP award and stuff. So there's nothing. I've never had any huge hits. I'm not a singles artist. Didn't quite happen to me. The highest I got in the charts in England was about 14, and that was a song called "Hold Back the Night," which I hadn't even written. It was by a group called the Tramps. So I can't say any one song, but I'd say probably "Don't Ask Me Questions" goes on and on, really.
Wow. And so, you when you brought up about or petrol as you call it, and but we say pumping gas here,
Yep.
that's very similar to another one of my favorite artists who died last year, John Prine. I'm sure you've heard the story how he was a mail carrier. He was delivering the mail, and he
Yeah,
was
he
right.
was. That's right. He was doing an honest living like me. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Don't knock it.
Yeah, so it's great to hear that because there are not too many professions where you can go from pumping gas or delivering mail to being on stage in front of thousands of
Yeah.
people. So, so I really love Elvis Costello, and your music reminded me a lot of his. That's why I first discovered you. Do you know Elvis at all? Were you influenced him at all, or was he influenced by you?
Well, my career began, and I had a record deal, and I was all set to roll, and then my name was starting to float around with the critics and things. And it may have been that my first album was out already or was about to be. And my manager knew him when he was as Declan McManus.
Yeah.
And so he'd been going before me. He'd actually been, had this band that he played with, Flip City, I think they were called. And Dave Robinson said, you should see Ian Drury, who had also been going before me. You should see this band. You should see Declan McManus. He's good. And I went to see him at the Hope and Anchor, and there was about 20 people there, and I honestly didn't get it at all. Um, you know, but basically I was so up my own at the time, so full of myself that I discounted everybody. And a year and a half later, he got a record deal, ironically, with the label that my manager, Dave Robinson, managed to start with by being successful with me, which was a label called Stiff Records.
Yeah.
And Costello got his first record out on there. So it was about a year and a half after me. And then I realized, whoa, this guy's good.
Well, and that period of music for me especially is, I mean, I didn't go to the Death to Disco rallies, but I might have gone there, and I hated disco. So new wave coming in when you guys did. Wow. I mean, it just opened music back up to me. So I just want to thank you personally for that. But were you influenced because you said the angry young man, and Elvis had some of that too. That was kind of part of the residue from the punk and the Sex Pistols and everything, and then you translate it into new wave and all this great music that came out. Was that how influenced were you by all the other groups that were coming out at the same time as new wave?
I much preferred disco. I was,
Oh, you
I
like
don't,
disco?
yeah, if there's ever been a bad disco record, I don't think I've heard it. I guess Boogie Oogie Oogie might, that's a silly song, but the actual track is fantastic. I mean, and Heat Wave, ain't no doubt we are here to party, boogie, come on. That blows new wave and punk out of the window. And as far as I'm concerned, give me a collection of KC and the Sunshine Band, and I'm
Yeah,
in,
right.
I am in, I'm in pig heaven. I liked it much more than punk and new wave.
Yeah, I agree with you. Disco was a lot of fun. I remember my mom dancing around the house to disco, and I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really cool, and it had, that some of it kind of intertwined with like Motown, so I
Yeah,
enjoyed it. Hmm. Okay,
funky. Oh, funky as all hell. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. How many songs have you put out in your career?
Well, okay, let's say an average of 12 an album, 26 studio albums, if somebody's better at maths than me. Um, but before you do that, of course, there's hundreds that get dumped because the formative years of attempting to write and not quite cracking it.
Hmm.
And plenty that I write now that I go, I don't know, put them on the side. And so, I've got about the makings of a dozen songs right now. No plans to record or anything. I'm letting the pandemic get out of the way.
Hmm.
And quite frankly, I've enjoyed having a year off. I've been dying for it forever. But be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want it to go
Good
on
for
this long, but
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, really enjoy it. It's a great break actually. And I've been back and forth to America. Last year I was there for 4 months and stuff, and not working, of course, but enjoying life. I mean, I have hit 70 now, so I'm not in a hurry. Let's put it that way.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so what other one do I want to ask you? Um, who were the coolest musicians that you met along the way?
Oh my goodness. Well, I toured with Bob Dylan, so that's pretty
Oh,
cool, isn't it? Yeah.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
I opened for Bob wanted me and the rumor to be one of the musical guests on the what was the biggest one day event ever in the history of the world. I remember reading it was called the Blackbush Festival or Picnic at Blackbush, and that was in 1978. And Eric Clapton was on, and Joan Armatrading, and some other acts. And then I toured with him in 1991. I was solo, and he had a four-piece band. And backstage one night, I remember it was me, Bob, Ronnie Wood, and George Harrison. So that's a pretty cool collection. Um, I met Lowell George briefly, who is my all-time hero. Basically, if there is a hero in pop music, I'll call it Lowell George, or perhaps favorite singer, and in many ways writer. Um, but it's just one of those things. You don't have to be a huge monster star to meet a lot of people in the industry. I
Hmm.
met Van Morrison once, who I'm very influenced by, and he looked at me with great suspicion. I thought he was going to punch me. Um, later, I met up with him again backstage at a Bob Dylan gig that I was opening for in Belfast, and he came on and sang with Dylan. He'd had a few drinks, and Van appeared to love me then, so all is forgiven for me ripping him off heartily.
Hmm. Hmm. So what's the funniest thing you experienced during your career, and what was the most embarrassing thing that you experienced?
Oh my God. The funniest and the most embarrassing. Uh,
Hmm. Maybe they're the same thing.
yeah, they probably are. I don't know. I mean, I have a few weird recollections. Wearing dark sunglasses when I was young, thinking I had to keep the image up in a studio, going down to the canteen in a studio that had a canteen, served food, egg, chips, and beans. I got, I think, real English style. And I thought I was putting it on the top of a big refrigerator, but I had these black sunglasses on, and it
Hmm.
was open, and it was like a freezer, and I dropped, and it was a dead freezer. It wasn't working. I dropped the food in. I was just so choked about losing my dinner. It doesn't sound like anything, but it embarrassed me. Um, I think just being on stage generally is embarrassing. I mean, everything about it is it's unnatural. It's like walking onto the surface of Mars, and I'm constantly sure that I am embarrassing to look at and hear.
Oh,
I
I
think
don't
it's
doubt
all.
that. We do
I
not
think
agree.
it's all been an embarrassment. Let's put it that way. So it's all a big laugh. So I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that springs to mind that is outwardly, terrible, like calling Van Morrison Bob or something.
Yeah. Did you
Hello,
go
Bob.
did you go through a wild period? I mean, most rock musicians seem to have at one point or another. There were the 80s. There was also the 70s. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's somewhere around the mid 70s. Things got a bit hedonistic at times. You can't help it. You're just in this insane situation, and just going from one country to the other country, and in sort of major cities, people got their own cliques of people, their own friends, and and the 80s, of course, were absolute debauchery and overdoing everything really. Um, it was potentially a dangerous time, but I've always had a great sort of survival instinct, and
Hmm.
that's what's kept me from pushing my luck. But it was very hedonistic and hedonistic, whatever the correct pronunciation is, and but basically, I think I've always had a work ethic. Like, you've got to go on stage and you've got to be good. I could never go on drunk or out of my head or anything.
Right.
I could be adjusted. My consciousness could be adjusted. Let's put it that way, but not to any point where I would be the embarrassment that you're talking
Hmm.
about. That kind of thing is not going to happen for me. So I avoided a lot of that stuff really in that sense.
Hmm. What kind of plans do you have coming up? I mean, now that, we're kind of entering the real world again and we're out and about. I also wanted to go back a little bit. What other work have you done? I know you wrote a book.
Yeah.
I think you were an actor at some point.
Well, I've had a few books out, fiction, short story collection, and a novel in like the 2000s, around that era, which I now own, got the rights back, and they're on grahamparker.net.
Mhm.
One of the short stories is called Carp Fishing on Valium, and the book is now called by its rightful title, The Thylacines Lair, based on the cryptozoological Tasmanian Australian marsupial wolf, which it's not a wolf. Never mind. They're comedy. It's all comedy, hopefully. And when I was actually, before my record deal began, I wrote an entire book called The Great Trouser Mystery, which is a kind of sci-fi fantasy like Monty Python in inner space, in inner and outer space. And that came out in 1980 with full illustrations. That's a bit obscure and hard to get. But I've only acted in the Judd Apatow movie, This Is 40, basically. But being on stage is acting anyway. Whatever you're doing in a certain sense, be it performing is acting. But before that, it was just menial jobs, as I said.
Wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, Graham, obviously, Graham is one of the many people that wrote celebrities that wrote a great blurb for my showbiz book is coming out later this year, and I've talked to several entertainers. I get a sense that a lot of times families react differently to any kind of fame or stardom of their loved ones. How did your parents react, your siblings, if you have any, and then I guess your children and everything obviously never knew you as anything else, but how has your family responded to you being different than most dads and sons and brothers?
Well, my parents couldn't believe it, really. There I was at 24 years old, working in the petrol station around the corner. I'd finished all my traveling and decided I'm going back, live with my parents. It won't cost me anything, and I'll write songs until I can get somewhere, which was a rash idea, but it worked. And they were astonished, and they'd always supported me.
Great.
They were just great people, and all the relatives were equally stunned and a little bit in awe, I think, or something. I don't know, but they all supported me, and so I was
Great.
very lucky. I had good family background,
Yeah, yeah.
and my kids, they did, one's 36 and the others 20 30, yeah, 35 and 26, something like that. I lose track. um they would steal my music from, what was it, Napster or LimeWire or something. That's, which made me realize this is all over. That's what it made me think. I'm dead in the water here, because
Uh,
that's what kids do now. But um, they don't know all my records, because there's 26 of them and lots of compilations and stuff. But they're still picking up on music, and my son is now making fabulous songs that he's doing on his computer on his own. He's Jimmy, and Jimmy Parker. He has a band called Icon Park, and he has a new album out called Corrector Mundo. And I'm astonished at the creativity of the chord progressions and all these things musicians would listen to. He doesn't sound like me in any shape or form, but it's just my daughter's musical as well. So that's great to see. Although on the other hand, I wish there'd been hedge fund managers. I mean, I forgot. That's what I said. Do something sensible. Make me rich in my old age. What's wrong with you? But no, no, no. They've got to be creative. Oh, airy fairy creative types. God damn it.
Mhm, mhm. What do you think? What career path would you have taken if you hadn't become a rock star? And when I say rock star, I mean when you play rock and roll, rock is the operative word there. So
Yeah.
you were a true
Um,
rock star.
I would have been. I might have made it to maybe assistant manager in a very small supermarket. I might. I might have gotten that far, but I'm the uneducated. I'm the working class, and there really probably wasn't a great future for me, and I would have had to accept that. And that would have only happened if my songs didn't turn out to be so darn good.
Mm,
And when they were good, by the time I was 23, I thought, I cannot be stopped. I've got to do this. And I was so willfully intent on it that it became moot as to what I would ever do otherwise.
mhm, mhm. And so I know we just have a few more minutes with you. What celebrity do you have a secret crush on? And then plug away.
Oh my goodness! I don't think there's anyone right now. That would be creepy. I'm 70, and I suppose I could say Meryl Streep, gorgeous woman.
there you go.
Oh, you can be honest because people in LA, I mean, that's standard procedure, I
Sure.
think.
um, let's see. I don't know whether I really fancy anybody right now in films, especially when you watch things like Black Mirror and Utopia and terrible, scary things like that. It's not, you don't
Yeah.
have time to fancy anyone much. Um, Goodness great. You know what? When I was a bit younger, I thought Sybil Shepherd. Sybil Shepherd was, what a knockout! I thought she was.
Yeah.
I did lust after Sybil Shepherd, and
Yeah.
there's got to be some others. I can't remember actually now. It's not something I keep in the front of my mind.
Yeah.
Best
Yeah.
left in the burner of being younger. Yeah.
Okay, so where I know you mentioned your website, maybe you can give it again. Where can people pick up your albums or anything special that you really want to promote as far as your work goes?
Well, I have a live album out now, recorded in 2018. It's called Five Old Souls, and it's me with a full band with the two surviving members, or working members, of the Rumor Brass, which
Mhm.
I think Donald will know from the very early albums of mine and early
Yes.
tours. And they're still going, and they don't call themselves the Rumor Brass, but they did for me. They were on the latest studio album, which is about 3 or 4 years old now, called Cloud Symbols. But I would say Five Old Souls is the best live album of mine, absolutely, to me, and the sound of it is fabulous, and the song selection. And if you go to grahamparker.net, you can get linked up with all that. But for the big laughs, follow me on Twitter at it's Graham Parker. Or yeah, no,
I have to
actually,
do that. I have to
I've got
find you
that
on
wrong.
Twitter.
At the Graham Parker.
The Graham
The
Parker.
Graham Parker.
Yeah, I didn't name it myself. A record company started it as all these things, and then I inherit them. But at the Graham
That's
Parker
when
is
you know you're famous, when you put a "the" in front of your name.
that's right. Yeah, that's what my cousin, when she writes a letter to me, it says the Graham Parker. It's so embarrassing.
And then you must have the little blue check on Twitter.
No, I don't. I looked into the details.
Really?
Yeah, I looked into the details, and it looked easier to apply for a visa to tour North Korea doing talks on democracy than filling the form in. So I gave up on it. I'd rather stick an 18-inch spike through my head than fill out a form. So I've left it, and I'm hoping one day I'll get people to work for me and do these things for me. That's what I'm hoping, so they can put the blue check on, but I don't have one.
So the Graham Parker. I mean, that's pretty clear.
Well, it's fantastic,
That's
Graham.
clear enough.
It's so wonderful to talk to you again, and so, thanks so much for being with us. And you're just a wonder. You're still going strong. You still have great energy. Still putting out good music. So everybody check him out at grahamparker.net. Buy his new album. Thanks so much, Graham. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Don and Ella. Bye bye.
Right,
Bye bye now.
we'll be right back into these words.